15 years ago won't buy much of anything here today.
And why the millennial generation is starting to give up because they can't afford to get a good job or own a house.
8 million Venezuelans voting for this assembly, saying it's actually less than 3.
It is. And people are going to start rioting in the streets.
Was reported to have asked Putin for military support that would help him stay in power.
We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
And they ignore him. And 8 more years goes by till Bernie himself finally admits to his sons, hey, I've been running a Ponzi scheme.
Does its dominance mean it can use the alliance for its own ends?
Since 1981, bond yields, also known as coupon rates, have just gone down and down and down.
The Federal Reserve note will be your biggest financial liability.
RTD Live Talk, we're live, and so doing something a little bit different, and so live on a different set today. So sorry for the delay, but as always, I'm excited to have you guys join us for afternoon talk, and I have a special guest. So this is my very first time doing something live outside of my normal environment. So looking forward to having a chance to share what's happening here. As you see, SD Bullion above my head, as well as having Mr. James Anderson, the marketing analyst from SD Bullion, joining us to share his thoughts on what's happening in the economy, as well as what's happening over on the monetary system and the importance of precious metals in this particular time. So, as always, if we have any new viewers, let me know where you're watching us from. I do have a number, 1-833-LIVE-RTD, but due to the fact I don't have service right now, so I won't be able to talk to anyone directly. But at any point, if you guys have a question, feel free to just ask in the chat room, and we can get your questions answered. So, other than that, the goal is just to inform and educate. So if you get this video a thumbs up and share this video with your family, friends, or however you want to do it, because a lot of information here will be very informative. So, as always, James Anderson.
Hey.
Welcome to RTD Live Talk.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is exciting. I've seen you before on YouTube, so I'm excited to take part.
Well, I appreciate you taking time for me and the RTD audience. And so as we allow more people to chime in, I want to welcome Student of Life, Jeff, Richard, Soray, Austin there. So welcome to the channel, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Ask any questions in relation to political issues, I assume, monetary, cryptos, whatever. We're going to try to cover it all. And then more importantly, the reason why I'm here, amongst other things, is I'm having a chance to partner with SD Bullion for a special opportunity. And I call it the golden opportunity. And it has a lot to do with the idea of getting your weight up. And so if you guys are familiar with the whole concept of hashtag get your weight up, we're going to have an opportunity for you guys to actually do that. And it doesn't require a lot of money to do such. And so a lot of people always mention about how, you know, silver, but they never really speak about gold for the most part because it's not affordable. So let's start off right away on the idea that gold is affordable, and what today will be presented to them will be an opportunity for them to get involved in the gold market they want.
Sure. Yeah, it's a misconception, I think, that people look at gold because it's, what, $1,220 an ounce, at least the spot. They don't understand that you can buy 1 gram of gold and just kind of save slowly but surely in grams of gold. Obviously, you know, typically the premium is a little higher because it's such a small unit. It's a little more expensive to make. But overall, you can definitely buy 1 gram of gold and slowly but surely increase your stack and get your weight up, as you say.
Right. I do agree 100%. So the goal is November is going to be Get Your Weight Up month. And so my whole goal this month is just to basically pump as much as I can with the idea of how affordable it is for people to actually acquire gold. And so we have a lot of silver bugs out here, but yet gold is still something that has always been considered the money of kings, and silver the money of the people, and fiat the debt, the currency of slaves. I think it says something like that. And so as always, guys, give me a thumbs up if you can hear us. Let us know that the audio is good, because as I mentioned, completely new setup here. I got a lot of stuff rigged up right here, and so we try to make it work. So we'll make sure we can be heard. And so we got Shane says hello, John says hello. So any questions you guys want to ask, feel free to do so, because I have a gang of questions I want to start with. So very first one, James, is the idea that here you came out with an ebook earlier this year, and so it's called Gold Rush, 21st Century Gold Rush. And so right now, with the way the 1,200 price range is not really spiking the way a lot of people would, I'm sure, like to see that price spike. Share with us a little bit about what's inside that book, why you wrote it, and what we can expect with this rush. I guess it's coming or currently underway.
No, it's already underway. It's been underway this entire century. It's the biggest. You know, we had a gold bull market in 1970 up to 1980, and that was more of a Western-led gold bull market. You know, last time we didn't have Russia involved, we didn't have China involved. You know, India probably was, but to a certain extent, it was mostly Western-driven, mostly driven by the futures exchanges and the COMEX, etc. So this time around, it's everyone in the world is involved with this. You know, gold is being bought all around the world, and the question, I guess, is: are they buying it physically, or are they buying it in derivative form? I was looking today, just today, I think the World Gold Council was mentioning gold. Physical gold coin bar demand is up 25% through Q3, and 25%, 28% overall, but most of it was led by China. And then you look at the Western ETF flows of gold, and it looks like Westerners are selling while China's buying. So if you watch or track any of the derivatives or the ETFs that are out there, you'll see a lot of physical flows going east, and that's been the trend basically this entire century, but it really picked up after the 2008 financial crisis.
Right.
You know, that's really where it took off. And you know, as you mentioned about gold versus silver and all these other things, central banks buy gold for a reason. It is the ultimate money, and they know that. Whatever they say, you can discredit it because their actions tell you otherwise.
Right. I do agree 100%. Now, a lot of people in the precious metals community, aka stackers, as some people like to be called, and so a lot of people always comment via when we have live talks about the idea that, Mike, what's up with the price? What's up with the price? The manipulation.
Right.
And I tell people a lot of times, don't even think about what the paper price is, because when you're gonna need it the most, you won't really care about that particular price. What are some things you would share for those that are probably a little bit discouraged over the fact that it seems to be some type of influence on the actual price daily, if not for the last 10 years. What are your thoughts on that? What would you tell people to encourage them?
Yeah, I mean, look, gold and silver is not a get-rich-quick scheme, okay? So you don't think you're going to buy this and tomorrow all of a sudden be able to retire. This is something that you use for slow, steady savings, and you especially want to buy it when it's relatively cheap versus other asset classes. Right now, commodities are about as cheap as they've ever been versus paper assets or stocks or fixed income bonds, etc. Even real estate, very cheap versus real estate at the moment. So, you know, you want to buy what's cheap. You know, that's basically how investing works. You buy low, you sell high eventually. And some people have the idea, you know, they want to buy gold and buy silver and keep it forever. You know, that's fine. I think that someone should always have a position in gold and silver. But right now, it's pretty cheap, and it's pretty reasonable to get aggressive at these price points, because I don't think you could be hurt much. You know, as far as gold, you know, possibly spot could go down a little further, and same with silver. But on the long run, and given what our, you know, the powers that be are doing with the monetary system, I don't think you're going to get hurt much doing this for the long term.
Right. I do agree 100%. And so for those that are just tuning in, I have James Anderson, the marketing analyst for SD Bullion. And so as you can see, doing something completely different, because today is November 1st. And I'm going to really, really try to pump up the get your weight up aspect this month. So my goal is to help you basically get something affordable in your hands in the form of gold especially. And so we're actually here to kind of, you know, announce officially for the next couple of weeks, and while supplies last, you know, for the RTD viewers, you guys have a chance to actually acquire something physical in your hands. And I actually have a couple of I have a couple of things right here in my hand here, but yet more importantly, for this little piece of gold right here, if you can see that, they are going to work with us, the RTD community, to help us, you know, be able to afford it by giving it to us at dealer cost. So it's something I definitely think you guys should take advantage of, because what I'm trying to do is basically promote the monetary awareness and the importance of right now. I believe that precious metals might end up being the cheapest that they might be in the near future, especially given the take all this recession talk and whatnot. So looking ahead, what are your thoughts on the whole idea of a recession? Recession. A lot of analysts now are coming out talking about recession, and we usually know when markets crash, usually all that liquidity flows into tangible real assets. Right. What are your thoughts? Is that something that you are concerned with, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at all the asset classes right now, we're basically in what a lot of people term an everything bubble. Everything bubble except for gold and silver, basically. And so, again, that goes back to the buy low, sell high. You know, you want to buy the things that are cheap. So if everything's in a bubble, it's difficult to resist, you know, right now thinking that gold and silver are good value versus other things. Other things are historically very expensive at the moment.
Right.
And, you know, the question is, it's hard because day to day, year to year, this goes on, and it's continued for a long time. You know, 2011 to now has been a long road for a lot of, you know, precious metal bulls. So it's definitely been tough, but and it also grinds on you psychologically. You almost feel like, am I crazy? You know, and you have to kind of recheck your stuff and look at your reasoning for why you bought it. And the reasoning for why you bought it probably hasn't changed and actually gotten better, you know, over this time frame. So it's a patience I found is more precious than even the metal sometimes. You know, a lot of people don't have the patience or the long view, and that's what it takes to be successful if you're saving in bullion.
Right, I do agree. And so other than that, we are live at SD Bullion, and so the goal is to get your weight up. And so we have an offer on the screen that I think is definitely you guys should take advantage of because it's for a limited time. So they've been willing to work with me for a couple of weeks or while supplies last. And so my goal is to make sure everyone has a chance to actually get something. And to be honest with you, I would love for the viewers and those who might watch this after the fact to pretty much buy everything you guys have. Like, I would love for people to actually be able to take advantage of this opportunity to get a piece of gold, that costs, you know, roughly at this current moment of viewing around $50 or so, give or take, of which I believe, of course, you know, you guys pride yourself on being the lowest cost or lowest price period. So I think it's one of a kind because actually, you know, in preparing for this, I Googled and did a little research amongst other metal companies, and, you know, out the door after everything's said and done, you guys are still the cheapest. So I appreciate you for working with me in that regard there. So as you guys have noticed, I have James Anderson from SD Bullion, and so I want to check in on the chat and see who is any new viewers or whatnot. Give us a thumbs up if you're new. Let us know where you're watching us from. And so it's not too often I get a chance to do an afternoon stream. So if you are here, then hopefully you are aware of what's going on or perhaps might be interested. So question-wise, it says, what is gold? So this is from Ty. Sure. It says, what is gold and silver going to look like when we all have this reset?
Yeah, the question of a reset is that's difficult to prognosticate, right? Everybody can have their guess of how they think this may go. And it ranges from everything could just be hunky-dory. This is going to work out. Don't worry. The powers that be got it under control. Yeah. I don't buy that. And then on the far end is the Mad Max scenario where everything crumbles and falls you know, out of whack. Yeah. I don't buy that either. I think we're going to fall somewhere in the middle. You know, as we talked about gold, again, when you go back and look at history, and every 30, 40, 50 years, we have typically in the world a situation where they have to reset the monetary system because it's not working. Right. And human beings are the ones that are behind it, and as we know, human beings aren't perfect. And so they design things that don't work, and eventually it kind of runs out of steam and they have to reset the thing. And a lot of times when they do that, gold has to be repriced, and it usually gets repriced a lot higher in value. And I think that's the supposition. That is the thesis, essentially, that they have been doing such crazy things to the monetary system that ultimately, at some point, they're going to have to reset it. And in doing so, they're going to have to mark down a lot of bad debts, which have been building. Obviously, you know that we have record-sized debts, and it's grown. It's grown a lot since 2009. We're almost at a quarter. It's 250 trillion right now. I think was the last update in the beginning of 2018. So, you know, how much of that debt can actually be paid, and how much further can the world go into debt without, you know, eventually paying it all back? It's a question that is very, very complex and very deep, and ultimately, at some point, there's going to have to be a reckoning. And in that reckoning, I think gold will do very well, and so will silver. My hunch is that gold will do, longer term, it will be the value that's more stable. Obviously, silver will be a little bit more volatile. I think there's a lot of people who have the feeling that silver will be the outperformer, but it'll be a wild ride along the way. So it's kind of, I think both metals have their place in a portfolio. And when you go back and you start looking at backtesting data from, you know, throughout this entire fiat currency era, there's been studies that have been done. Gold is the anchor of the portfolio for bullion, at least. Silver is the one that can occasionally outperform, but gold is the one that's steady. Right.
Now, you mentioned a wild ride, and so I would imagine that currently right now, especially over the last couple of weeks, a lot of people who are invested in conventional assets such as equities or whatnot have been experiencing somewhat of a wild ride with the volatility up and down and whatnot. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening, you know, on Wall Street right now in that area with equities and whatnot. So there's, you know, several 100-point drops, and it recovers, drops again. So at the end of the day, it's about 11% loss over the last 2 or 3 weeks of just paying attention. What is it? Is this the beginning of something, or is this just typical everyday activity, you think?
Yeah, it's a good question because you have the bond market right now with them raising interest rates, with QT going on. It looks like there's a situation where there's more volatility, obviously, but you're talking about the two largest asset classes in the world, between the bond market and then next largest one is the stock market. The U.S. stock market right now is as large as it's ever been. And the question, I think, is, you know, you have to look at the whole scope of what's going on here. You're talking about our demographics in our country right now. We have baby boomers who are retiring at a clip of about 10,000 a day. You have unfunded liabilities. You have pensions, stuff that have not been funded to the promises that have been made. Right. And so it's like you start looking at what are the heads of the Federal Reserve saying, what are the heads of some of these large global central bank institutions saying. A lot of, you know, just from my analysis, from stuff I've been seeing, there's a lot of trial balloons out there talking about in the next crisis we're going to have to take the gloves off and buy stocks outright. That's the Federal Reserve talking that kind of thing. Yeah. And so my hunch is, you know, that sounds like Japan to me. I mean, that's basically the idea, is that they think they can come in and maybe prop up the stock market and help out those unfunded pension plans, et cetera. And yeah, that may work, and that may nominally drive the stock market higher, but eventually what goes down eventually is the currency in that kind of situation. Right. People start losing credibility. People start looking and questioning and rethinking the dollar. And that's already in process, as you all well know. But it gets exacerbated in that kind of situation. There are people out there who I respect and who have been in the macroeconomic world who have talked about the Federal Reserve has, you know, a balance sheet right now of $4 trillion. In the next recession, it's going to $8 trillion, and a lot of it is going to be due to trying to prop up the stock and equity market.
Now, I think $8 trillion is actually being a little bit nice, given the fact that over the last, just, you know, my little bit of research, every recession or every correction, it's always a doubling or tripling. Right. And then, you know, as we look at the results of our national debt under the last administration, it went from, I think, 10, 11 trillion to now it's 21 within 2 years of the current administration. And so if that is correct, if time does repeat, or history does repeat, a doubling would take us 30, 40-ish, give or take. So the question is, how is it sustainable? Because the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, always comes out with their projections on what the national debt will be. And so I'm looking at these numbers of, I think I saw something not long ago about 30, 40 trillion. And as they mentioned, as if it's normal, natural. But I believe that something will take place before then. It's going to have to do with, you know, the Federal Reserve note no longer being the anchor of the monetary system. And so what are your thoughts on that? You know, what's the de-dollarization process underway? Is it going to speed up, or will it stay even pace, or what?
Yeah, it's been building, right, for the last 10 years, really obviously. Since the financial crisis, you've seen, you know, one thing after another, just, you know, a lot of people call about, you know, it being the nail in the dollar's coffin or something like that. But it's been building, and especially on the eastern side of the world, you have, you know, China, who is the #1 buyer of all commodities in the world. And no matter what happens there, that will likely continue. You know, in the 90s, Japan, after their stock market crashed, if you look at their commodity buying, it barely fell. You know, so they kept buying commodities. That didn't change, although their stock market has never gotten back to that level since, right? So, you know, what happens as far as in the future, my hunch is that China, if they continue to be the #1 buyer of commodities, will want more of a sway over how that price is discovered, right? Right now, the price is discovered in Western markets, mostly. I mean, almost all of it, really. If you look at gold or silver, for instance, you're talking about between the LBMA and COMEX, that is the heavy domination of what we use to price this. Yeah. And that, to me, is a gift, you know, if you're thinking long-term, if you're looking out long term, because they've been discounting the price of this for really since they've kind of been around. I mean, they lost control in 1980, and they learned a lot about what they did wrong. Yeah. And they implemented a lot of things. The LBMA, for instance, came about in 1987, and I was just looking at it yesterday because the LBMA is now running around talking about how transparent they're going to be, which is just a bunch of half promises. Yeah. And when you look at the chart, the most damning thing I can say about the LBMA is if you look at the chart of gold in the entire fiat currency era from 1970 to today, there is a very, very tight correlation between 1987 and up to today. Basically, if you had traded around the LBMA hours, if you had bought gold at the end of the day of LBMA and then sold it in the morning when the LBMA came around, we'd be at $13,000 an ounce gold. If you had just stuck with it, we'd be here at, you know, just under $1,300 an ounce gold. Yeah. And if you had traded, for instance, if you had bought gold at the beginning of the LBMA day and sold it at the end of the LBMA hours, you'd be left with like $3. So that is flat out irrefutable evidence from 87 to now. That is just everyday, just mathematics.
Yeah.
And I don't care who you're going to point the finger at or what you're going to say. That's just math. So I like math when I make my decisions. So to me, it's like you're getting a gift. You're getting gold at a price that is a lot cheaper than it probably would be had they not been in there haggling and doing the sophisticated manipulation they've been doing for decades.
Yeah, I do agree 100%. So let's get to some questions. Are there any questions out there? So typically, there's a number above my head that you can call in, but as of now, it's not working. So if there's any questions for James or just in general, feel free to ask in the chat. And so I'm going to thumb through a little bit. And so for those that might just be tuning in, if you are tuning in and you recognize the opportunity here to actually acquire something physical, so the whole goal will get your weight up is to actually work with SD Bullion to actually put this in your hands at dealer cost. So to cut down the price a little bit so that more people can get this, there'll be no excuses. And so we'll move on. But other than that, question-wise, it says, hi, James and Mike, SD Bullion is the best IMO. Great initiative, Mike. It says code is not working. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, you know what? A lot of times, just for you guys out there, the code, you need to log in first before you use the code. So if you're in the shopping cart and you're looking at it and you want to put the code in before logging in, it won't work. So you need to set up an account, then use the code, and it'll work.
Okay, way to clarify that. It says, what's up? It says, what's up with China out mining South Africa domestically?
Yeah, South African gold mines have had a lot of trouble over the last few years, and they're slowly but surely losing their strength. It's an interesting thing. South Africa has mined, in all of human history, they have mined over a quarter of all the physical gold in the world. They have mined the hell out of their country. There's a lot left, I'm sure, but they have a lot of problems in South Africa if you've been paying attention. And they always have issues with their labor strikes, etc. And, you know, the question is, why is China out mining South Africa? It's China, you know, they've been very, very, you can tell for the last 10 years, that has been very important to them, is to acquire as much gold as they can. And it's not just from the ground. They're the #1 miner in the world. Domestically, they're doing it in their own country. But they're also running around Africa right now, setting up mines, buying out mines, setting up different deals and bilateral agreements with different African countries in order to gain commodities, which is what they need. They have over 1 billion people in that country, and they want to live a first world life. Yeah. And so there's going to be high demand for commodities to continue if the quality of life in China continues to grow as it's been.
Right. Now, speaking of China and how much they're mining, there's no official numbers that is believable in my part, because what the World Gold Organization reports is clearly doctored and not truly 100%. So, in your estimation, based upon your analysis and your research, because you are in the metals business full time, what could they be sitting on? What could their weight be? They're definitely getting their weight up.
That's a good question. When all the different analysis I've done, there's been a lot of other people who have come before me doing that analysis. So Alistair McLeod, one guy, he's written about it, and he's probably gone the furthest in depth is going backwards. So he's gone back to the liberalization in China in the early 80s and looked at gold flows from there. And it looks like from there on in, they've been importing gold, but it's really sped up since the financial crisis and gotten real obvious since they brought around the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So ultimately, the amount of gold that they're getting and the question of how much gold is there is really difficult to say, because in 2015, they got part of the IMF's SDR, right? And in order to do that, they had to declare a certain amount. They basically had to declare a little increase in gold, and it was a nice, polite way of saying, yeah, we're buying gold, and this is officially what we got. So they may have added like officially 500 tons, something like that, which is nonsense, because every year they're mining 500 tons and they're importing like 2,000 tons of physical, right? So ultimately, that's not all going to private hands. Right. And remember, in China, obviously the president he's the emperor now. I mean, Xi is now there until he dies or there's a political overthrow.
That is amazing.
Yeah, and it shows you that they're under a situation where they know they're going to have to do some drastic things ultimately in order to continue to grow and have a good quality of life for their people. But in order to do that, there's probably going to be some losers. Yeah. And they've got already their spy state in place. If anybody's been watching China and noticing what they've done with their social media and their scoring about people, how they act in society and all that kind of stuff, it is 1984 on, it's going on right now in that place. They have re-education camps. They have all types of things like that. So it is a weird situation. It's a totally different culture. I'm not saying that it's it's god awful. It's just a different culture. So as far as, the question is how much do they have? A lot of people have estimated out there that they probably have 15 to 20,000 tons. And there's a lot of people who won't say that because they think if they say that, they're going to be labeled a kook or this or that. Yeah. But if you look at physical gold flows, there's probably that amount in the official reserves. And my hunch is there's probably another 5 to 10,000 tons in private hands. Yeah. And so it's a question of how long will that take till they officially declare it. And when you ask people in China, they'll tell you they have 3 pots. That's another thing. They have, obviously, their official holdings that they claim, but then they also have all the military gold they've been mining. They have literally a military division that is mining gold. And they also have their sovereign wealth funds and their various banks that have physical golds. And they have been building out their gold vaulting throughout that country as well. Right. So any gold that's in those banks is essentially official gold because those banks they're part of the government. They are quasi-government agencies. So at the moment when they want to, they can declare a lot more gold.
Now, what's interesting about that is there's a RT viewer who actually is located in Asia right now, and he often just comes online late night and whatnot and gives us information. And he said that basically the citizens are encouraged to actually acquire physical. Right. So he said you can go around, I think he said to banks or to like little kiosk type situations and actually put in paper and get something out tangible. And so that it's not often that a government would encourage their citizens to acquire. So in your opinion, why would the government encourage their citizens? What are they preparing for? Or what are your thoughts?
So China, I think, has a problem because their currency, the way that their system works is they don't want their yuan. They have 2 yuans. They have a local yuan and they have offshore yuan. And they don't have an open capital account. They don't have citizens have to kind of go around rules to get the capital out of the country. And a lot of people want to do that because in China, a lot of people that are the wealthiest are politically connected. And that can change like that. Yeah. And so if they're wealthy and they're involved in political this or that, pretty much anyone in China who's wealthy is involved somehow, some way, and politically. So if you look and you go down the rabbit hole of what happens in China, you have billionaires sometimes that get erased. And that money goes away. So if they can somehow squirrel some money outside of the country, then maybe they can get their, some of their sons or daughters to go out and study elsewhere in other countries. Maybe they can get some of that wealth out in those other countries so their progeny, if things go wrong in China, can at least have a good life elsewhere. Right. And so for the last decade or two, there's been a hot money flow from China as well. You look at Vancouver in Canada, you look at Toronto, you look at Seattle, San Francisco, New York. There's been a lot of money coming out of China to buy real estate, and that's made bubbles in a lot of these cities for real estate. So that's just a common phenomenon. I think if you lived in a country where things could change like that, you'd probably want some of your money out too.
Right, very true. Now, speaking of which, the turmoil and the uncertainty in a lot of emerging markets, and so we have, I can name off top. We got Venezuela, Argentina, we got Zimbabwe, South Africa. List goes on. I have not actually tallied up the total amount of countries that are having some issues with their currency. So there's a lot of people looking to diversify out of the national currency. So in my opinion, it's going to be the next crisis will result in a global national currency situation. And so in your opinion, right now with the price of metals the way they are, how important would it be or is it for people to really think about the opportunity of being able to acquire at this current moment and then the risk reward factor if they don't?
So yeah, you're talking about U.S. citizens or people in just anywhere in general?
Well, RTD viewers know about what's happening all around us.
Sure.
It's just the uncertainty of what could happen here because there's people out there that still say the dollar will never go away. You're a conspiracy, all that good stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, if you look at that little chart from Fred, the purchasing power lets us know that we're losing purchasing power regardless. Right. So share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, you can't have. It's not smart to have all your wealth denominated in one currency, and that's just that's just basic common sense. You want to have, I think, some of your wealth denominated in some things that won't go down if the currency doesn't do well, right? So, just walking around the world with dollar glasses on and thinking that that's always going to be the case, I would just take you back in time and say, early 20th century, you could have said the same thing about the British pound and how the British Empire's the sun will never set on them, and that's not true. The sun set on them, and their currency went to crap. In the 60s, 70s, they had terrible inflation there. They used to be the reserve currency of the world, and now look at it. It's a joke. It's almost at par with the dollar. So time eventually catches up to all empires. And so I'm not saying that tomorrow the empire of the United States is going to fall apart, but I would think that in our lifetimes it will dwindle.
Right, I do agree. Now let's get to some questions. And so as always, I'm with James Anderson, the marketing analyst for SD Bullion. So you can see we're doing something a little bit different today. We're actually on site at SD Bullion because of the Get Your Weight Up campaign that for the next couple of weeks they're going to basically give you an opportunity to acquire a physical piece of real tangible gold right here for a dealer cost. So, it's a privilege, I think, for you guys to be willing to work with my channel, given it's not, I don't have 100,000, but it'll get there, give or take. So I appreciate you guys working with us.
I like your channel.
But thank you. And so let's get to some questions. And so I saw a question here. It says, what's moving more? This is from Low Blood Pressure, he's a frequent visitor. It says, what's moving more at SD Bullion, gold or silver?
Typically silver is the higher purchased item, volume-wise. Gold it depends too on the demographic, right? If a customer calls up and they're of an elder age, like say they're 50, 60, 70, and they're looking to retire soon, they don't have a whole lot of their life left to gain an income, right? So you'll see a lot of them, they'll definitely buy gold because they see it as being less volatile and, just more steady. And so typically, demographically, the way it goes is the younger a person is, the more aggressive they are buying maybe all silver, versus the older generations will buy gold a lot. Just flat out, they'll buy gold, or they'll buy a big mix where there will be a large gold allocation as well. But in general, majority silver buying is typically the way it goes.
Right, fair enough. Fair enough. And so someone here says, rethinking the euro. I would bet moving more silver. Says silver is my guess. So we have not with the reset if Trump declares a Federal Reserve criminal, and so a lot of people, so that's a good point. So right now there's in my awareness of this whole monetary system, this is the first time a president is actually verbally speaking out against an institution that's supposed to be sacred and hush hush. Yeah. And so, what are your thoughts? Is he stirring the pot on purpose, or is there a plan, or what's up? What do you think?
Yeah,
about that?
I think. No one knows for sure, right? Behind the scenes, what's going on, and there's a lot of various theories out there about what Trump is up to. But one that looks pretty obvious is that he, as candidate Trump, was talking about big, fat, ugly bubbles in the stock market. Yeah. Back when the Dow was at like 17,000, and now it's 25-ish. So if it was a bubble then, I wonder how big and fat and ugly it is now. But yet you look at his Twitter feed, and it's just go stock market, go. So he's now a stock market cheerleader and champion. Yeah. The other day he held a gun to the stock market and said, if you vote for the Democrats, see you later, stock market. And by the way, whenever anyone in power does something like that, do the opposite. It's just like the 2009 when they said the stock market or the financial system won't work, so we need to bail out these people. We should have said no. And seen how it went, because I bet it would have done better for the average people in our country. But just back to this, what's going on? I think you see Donald Trump out there he's basically playing a little charade, and he's done a really smart thing. He basically says that the Fed is doing political things and that they're raising interest rates too high, too fast, and that gives him room politically. When or if there is a big recession that happens, he can point at the Federal Reserve and say it was them, and then he can turn around and take all the rage that's built up over the last many decades against the Federal Reserve, and appropriately so, and he can just turn that rage right where he wants to move it. So it's not going to be difficult for him to point the finger if things go wrong in the stock market and say it was the Federal Reserve that did it, not I.
Now, the question would be, will the people believe him? Because most people don't even know what the Federal Reserve is or the origins of their currency or their national currency and who controls it. So do you think the people will believe him?
I don't think people are fighting over everything today. Now with the internet and the way that we communicate and how siloed we are and how difficult it is to have just a calm, reasoned conversation. I don't think we're going to have that for some time. And until the adults get back in the room and we have calm, reasoned conversations, I think it's going to get crazier. Yeah. And so, that could happen. He could point the finger at the Federal Reserve, and half will believe him and half won't.
Yeah, good point there. Now, so as always, for those that might be tuning in, I'm not sure how many people are joining us. Let's find out. So we have 50 people watching, and I'm looking at the screen. There's 17 thumbs up. So, and 2 thumbs down. So I appreciate you for both. And so it's not a problem at all. And so a part of the whole Get Your Weight Up campaign, I'm going to start off today. It's November 1st. And so actually, today, I'm sure, I told you guys during the last video that, there's a special SD Bullion 1 gram here that I'm going to be looking to give away starting today. So this month, I'm going to go into my pocket a little bit and really try to, ramp this campaign up to get more people, out here acquiring something that is extremely cheap. So I have an SD Bullion, Proclaim Liberty Bullion. And so it's going to be up to James today to determine how we get it out there. But we won't start, and I'm not going to go into any more details until we reach at least 45 thumbs up, and then we can get into how we can possibly put that into the hands of somebody as a starter kit for your Get Your Weight Up campaign. And so I saw a question, so we'll keep moving right along and get into some more questions. And then eventually, once we get back to that 45 number, then we can give details. And so it says, this is from Ty, it says, since all countries are hoarding gold and silver, do you think America will go to a gold and silver backed money system per Constitution?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, Ty. In order to do that, you'd have to reset the price of gold and silver much higher, much higher. And in doing that, that would create a whole lot of trouble as far as how our system is set up currently versus what that would look like. And that transition would be horrific. So really, to do that, you kind of have to go in baby steps, right? So you can't just swing from full fiat craziness to, no, we're going staunch constitutionalist, only gold and silver applied, forget your digital, yada, yada, I don't care about your phone.
Yeah.
Where's your gold and silver?
Yeah.
Like that's, those are extremes, right? And so we need to move from one extreme back toward, I think, something that's more conservative. I'm not saying that we're going to go back to a situation where we're walking around with gold and silver in our pockets, but it would be nice if we start moving back toward a situation where there's an anchor and there's some solidity to what our financial system is. My hunch is that in the next crisis, there will be some type of pitch like that. I think the IMF and the SDR, my hunch is they'll try and use some gold tag to it to kind of give it some credibility. It'll be a lie, of course. I mean, they're going to lie and say whatever they have to say to try and gain hold. So anyone out there, obviously that's probably where we're headed back toward. But as things go on, as time goes on, I think people will get smarter and more educated, especially with the internet and communicating. Yeah. My hunch is that more and more people will demand that their money be more sound, especially if we go through a really dramatic crisis in currencies. I think that will be something that we teach our children, and our children hopefully will learn that lesson. The difficult thing about humanity and history is that people forget it once they die off. Yeah. Once you go through about 3 generations, all those lessons have been lost. Yeah. So. Yeah.
I one of the blog posts I did a while back. And so Richard, I appreciate that super chat, my friend. Thank you for that. I did a blog post about it takes a generation to forget prior history. And so biblically speaking, it's usually 40 years, give or take.
Yep.
And so from 1933 to 1973, there was a 40-year window where gold was illegal for citizens to hold. And that, in my opinion, was the amount of time it took for the baby boomers' parents, generation... I'm not sure.
The greatest generation.
The greatest generation, yes. Yep. For them to get used to the idea of not having gold and silver in their savings for the most part, apart from jewelry, to where, they grew up in a household, the kids grew up in a household where it was just paper. So we went off of the United States notes, the Federal Reserve note, bank notes, all those notes and options.
Silver got out of the coinage.
Exactly. So silver certificates even were, used back in our time. So baby boomers have no, real knowledge and importance. They're coming around to it because I believe they're feeling the effects, right? And so they're concerned about their future, so they're more concerned about it. Yeah. So my question is, in reference to the transition for gold, I believe that the crypto side of things looks like it's going to be positioned, or it's positioning itself or being positioned. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm skeptical on the end, but also interested because of technology you can't deny. What are your thoughts on that?
So. I'm a little bit more skeptical of the entire thing, and here there's a whole myriad. That's a whole show in itself, and it's a topic I'm not as expert on crypto as I am on gold and silver, but I do have a little bit of research and knowledge on the subject. Back in like 2009, I used to get emails from a guy. I'm working in this industry. I'm getting emails from a guy talking about Bitcoin, 2010. I'm like, dude, we're selling gold and silver here. I don't care about crypto. And but it was dead on. I mean, he was talking about Bitcoin back when they were buying pizzas with it, you know? And so it was an asset class I did buy eventually, but not a whole lot. And I was amazed to see where it went. And, it's just one of those things, you can always look back and say, what if? But, hindsight's 20/20, right? Yeah. But when I look at it, the ultimate thing is it's really a question of value. And I appreciate the fact that cryptos are around because it brings up the discussion about money and just in general, what do we use as our, what we use for exchanging, goods and services in our world, and what's a fair way to do that? And, I think principle in my gut, when I look back at history, I think the best money of all time has been the one that was created by the universe or God or what have you. You don't necessarily have to believe in one, but this stuff was literally shot out of a blown up star, right? And there's no humans involved in that. It just ended up being the best money we've ever had. Yeah. Right? And the same with silver. You can't create silver out of just some $8 billion thing you built in Switzerland and you're shooting around. I guess they can make a gram of gold in the time it took the universe to form in that thing, right? Yeah. So they can make very, very small nano sizes of gold. Human beings have figured that out. But we're talking about nano size. And I'm talking about all the gold and silver in the universe literally comes from star explosions. All right, that is amazing. And the fact that it's shot to the universe, it landed on Earth, and now we're mining it, and we figured out, hey, this stuff's pretty handy for a lot of things, not just as money, but it's also handy in a lot of science and a lot of industrial applications. So it's the reason why it's precious and all that. I mean, it's to me is just mind blowing. I find it very, very fascinating.
Right. Now, a part of the whole crypto craze that we're in now is so a lot of people, predominantly the younger viewers or middle age. I mean, we're middle age. I'm not gonna give my age away, but we're middle age. But a lot of people are into cryptocurrencies and the idea of what could come in this next bull run, given what happened last year. And then we have the whole idea of institutional money, I guess, is supposed to be positioned itself to come into the sector. Right. And so my question to you is, actually, on the way here, watched the video where Charlie Lee, the creator of Litecoin, and so there's a large Litecoin community here, and he mentioned that Bitcoin to him is just as good a store of value as gold. Right. What would you say about that?
Right. And for how long of a history has Bitcoin been around?
10 years as of yesterday.
10 years, right. And no, look, the price appreciation is there's no precedent in history for that. 9 cents to $17,000. I mean, the only thing you could compare that to is like me turning around and drawing a Picasso, right? Right, and then selling it for just making value out of nothing, right? I mean, that is a pretty amazing appreciation in price. But if you go and look at some of the allegations and some of the studies that have been done, these are unregulated markets, people, and a lot of them are being mined in Asia. For instance, Bitcoin is mostly mined in Asia. And the question I have is a lot of, who are these miners? They're in China, right? If China was smart, they'd literally be mining Bitcoin, selling it to the dupes, and buying gold with the proceeds. Because in the long term, Bitcoin is just like any currency. It's going to be worthless in some point in the future. Everything goes to zero if it's human made. Yeah. At some point it will. And so the question is, I guess maybe you could price appreciate again. We could have another, I think was a ramp job. I think it really, if you go down the rabbit hole and you look at some of the academic studies that have been done, to me it looks like a bunch of insiders taking advantage of a bunch of dupes. Right. And I'm not saying that there's no technological importance to it. I think the technology has a lot of interesting things that could be used for. But ultimately, there's human beings behind it, and any human being in any system where they're creating currency or making money gets corrupted. And that's just my, that's just my honest opinion of all the research I've ever done. At certain points, that corruption becomes recognized, and we have to reset the value, and that's what this stuff does occasionally. Yeah. And this one to me is the most trustworthy. As far as what could happen, possibly we could have another ramp. I would be surprised if we don't actually. So Litecoin and Bitcoin, they could probably do real well, but you got to be real careful out there. I mean, I did a piece on silver doctors just because it triggered me. I saw Glenn Beck out there running around with some crypto newsletter writer. I think his name's Tiki.
Tikitori,
yeah. I mean, it's like Glenn Beck. If anyone knows his history, is just his audience. I don't understand it, but he just doesn't care. I guess he has no scruples. He basically will sell them anything, and it's no problem, I guess, because the ones he hurts, he can just keep steamrolling ahead. Yeah. And so you have to be very, very careful of what you're getting involved in.
Right. Okay, so looking at the chat. So, we're approaching that hour point, so drawing towards the end. And so I want to be respectful of James' time. And so with that being the case, I want to answer Tony's question because Tony mentioned that I ignored him 4 times. Okay. But yeah, in the middle of talking, didn't even see it, Tony, so I apologize for that. So it says, where's the question at? It says, what inning are we in? Where is the confidence meter in this game?
Okay. Tony, the question of timing is always most difficult, right? And you could ask a whole lot of people about their opinions, and you'll probably get a whole lot of answers. As far as this 21st century gold rush, I'm pretty confident that in the 2020s, the peak of it will play out. You have all these things converging at a time where, between the stock markets and the overvaluations of currencies around the world and all the debt that's piling up and what's going to happen with the monetary system and when's the next crisis and is there going to be one? What's the recession going to look like next time? My hunch is that in the 2020s we're going to see new nominal highs for gold and silver, and not only that, but we're probably going to end up seeing a mania where all of a sudden it's just like all the rage again. Like in 2010, I lived through that. I worked in this industry. I saw from 2010 to 2011 that the next one that you see, it was going to blow that one out of the sky. If you thought that was a bubble, that was nothing. That was just a pre-echo of what's coming. If you lived through the 1970 to 1980 bull market, that was a 10-year run. There was a pop in 74 to 75 and then a downtrend that ran. And then in 79, it just went exponential. So we're kind of in that long phase of it going sideways and down and all the people quitting out there and thinking that there's no reason to do this, that this industry's not coming back, etc. No, gold is, like George Soros said, the ultimate bubble. And what he meant by that is it's the final bubble. It's the one that clears away all the bad debts. And so that, I think, is coming in the next decade because you just have all these things converging.
Right. Fair enough. So for those that might just be tuning in, so I'm sitting here with James Anderson, marketing analyst for SD Bullion, doing something completely different here. So the goal today is to begin the campaign of Get Your Weight Up. And so, they're working with the RTD viewers to basically give a 1 gram piece of gold at dealer cost. And so, it's, they pride themselves on being the lowest price, period. And so here we are. And so it's a blessing to be able to work with these guys here to help you guys get your weight up. And so today is day 1. And we're starting off with giving away SD Bullion proclaim Liberty gold gram today. So as I mentioned, if we get to 45 likes, and so I saw somebody mention about, do you get paid for likes? I don't get paid for likes, but likes help, the viewership, and it helps get the word out because YouTube does an algorithm type of thing where if people are liking what they're seeing, they'll do a good job of promoting it so more people can come into the fold. So the goal is to get more people aware of this idea of having a chance to acquire something that most people say is, too expensive. So, if gold is the king's money, silver is money of the people, you get a chance to actually hold some physical gold, whatever size it is. I think this piece of metal here will do a lot better than paper in the long run. And so with that being the case, once we have 45 likes, as we draw towards the end, if we get to that point, I'll have James give you guys a question, and you'll have a chance to answer it within a certain amount of time. Okay. If you get it right, first person gets it right, you get a gram. Start the month off. So as we draw towards the end, I want to touch on, what appears to be in the making, and it's the whole tokenization of precious metals. And so there's a lot of either bullion companies or internet banks. Exactly. Everyone's getting into this crypto tokenization and using precious metals as an anchor. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Will it take off? Because you mentioned you don't see a time of what's going on with gold and silver physically in our pockets. Yeah. Could we swipe our phone for a gold exchange on a blockchain? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, look, 2 things. A lot of times people talk about, gold could never be part of the monetary system again because there's just not enough. That's a fallacy. It's really a question about what price gold needs to be able to be the anchor. Secondly, the question is, could you use it digitally? You can. The question is, who's holding it and how trustworthy are they? And again, like I said, humans are corruptible. So eventually, or they just incompetent. You know, the combination between incompetence, corruption is always there. So, who's holding it, and who's managing it, and are they trustworthy? Have they shown themselves to be competent, and are they trustworthy for the long term? Those are all questions you got to ask yourself.
Right.
And my hunch is if you're talking about your safest of all havens, you better be most confident in those people. And so, depending on where you live, you may live in a country where you can't take delivery, or it's too expensive to do so. So then you have to do the due diligence of finding the people that you can trust to do so, to help you. But in terms of overall, I do agree. I think there will be a lot of tokenization, and along the way there's going to be some that prove to be very good and some that prove to be very bad at it.
Right.
And so you have to be very careful of who are your counterparties and are they fulfilling what they promise.
Right. Now, we're at 44 thumbs up, so we're going got another question for you until we get that 45. As far as diversification, and so I've interviewed a variety of precious metals individuals that mention about the importance of being diversified geographically.
Yeah.
And so having some, and then even being able to relocate if need be. What are your thoughts on that? About storage aspect.
Sure. Like you can go all the way down to the level of in your own house, and not having it all sitting in one spot, right? So worst case scenario, you have someone tries to break into your house, say, and is looking around trying to steal your valuables. I've written articles about how to hide gold or how to hide silver, and just creative ideas of ways to put it in places where someone might not be able to find it if they broke into your home. And the other idea is to have it not all in one place, right? So you could have it hidden in various places. Obviously, you got to be careful with that because if you have a loved one, you have to make sure that in case you got hit by a bus, they would know where to find the stuff.
Yeah.
You might want to have a will that's sealed, that kind of thing. So, you could go down a rabbit hole of craziness when you're talking about diversification. So you have to kind of dot your I's and cross your T's. And I guarantee that for decades now, there's been people who have passed away and lost stuff because they left it somewhere and no one knew.
Yeah.
So that happens all the time. And then as far as geopolitical diversification, it makes sense. I think if you're someone who has high net worth, you don't necessarily have to have everything in one country. It makes sense to even possibly get a residence in another country in case you want to move or live somewhere else.
Yeah. Looking at this comment here, it says, you can hide it like prisoners hide drugs.
They do that, I think, to smuggle gold into India. That happens a lot. People put it in their derriere.
All right, so we'll get another question, and then it looks like we might have that 40. We got 46.
All right.
So we got 6 people watching. So good deal. So here's the rules, and I'll let you think about it.
Okay.
So I don't know what he's going to ask. I just told him, he'll have the opportunity to give the viewers the first gram to contribute to your diversification. Right. But it's all up to him and his answer. So I don't know what he's going to ask. So the question, or what I told him to do, was basically give the viewers a question in relation to some of the contents of your book that might be somewhat of a challenge, but yet cause the people to be sharp on their toes. Because the catch is, according to my timing, you got 10 seconds to answer it in the chat. And if he sees the answer within that 10 seconds, you win. So it's 10 seconds to answer the question. I'm gonna give him a second to think about it. Unless you got something right now, we can get to another thought and give you a chance to think about it. Then we'll draw down to the end and go from there. So let me know when you're ready. But other than that, there's a question that I wanted to get to, and while you think about that, if you can do both, okay. It says, Mike, in the event of a big war, U.S., Russia, China, the internet cable goes down, crypto will die at that point. So what are your thoughts on some type of event happening that could lead to the crypto sector going down, and possibly, how would gold operate in an environment where most people don't even have it? Right. How would you be able to, like I say, go to a location and exchange it for paper?
Yeah.
Would it be likely?
Yeah, look, this comes back to a question of all the trendies who think they want digital everything. Digital everything is kind of dumb, I think. It's a little short-sighted. If you look back at Puerto Rico, for instance, and their hurricane, how did that work out? Their ATMs didn't work. You couldn't even use a debit card. So you know who ruled? People who had cash. Had physical Federal Reserve notes. They were the ones who were running around buying stuff. Yeah. So that's always, if you're talking about crisis scenario where all of a sudden things shut down for weeks at a time, it makes sense to have bullion, and it makes sense to have some cash in emergency situations, because Federal Reserve notes are the thing that typically people use to exchange.
Right. I agree.
So it's just, don't put all your eggs in one basket. is basically what I would tell someone.
All right. So question-wise.
Yeah.
You got something in mind? So,
yeah, I do, but the question has to be answerable quickly, right?
And so once the sentence ends out of your mouth, I'm going to count to 10. So the idea is 10 seconds. It'd be hard to Google it real quick.
Yeah, right.
So it might be somewhat of a delay too. So I'm not sure if we're ahead or behind. But when I get to 0, if there's no answer on the screen, there goes your opportunity to walk away with a 1 gram contribution to your stacking capabilities. So as soon as you finish your question, I'm gonna count down, and might be a fast count or a slow count. But go ahead if you got the question.
Okay, all right. I did a lot of research and writing the book about the 1970s bull market in gold and silver. There was a month in 1980 in which they both hit simultaneous nominal price highs. What month was that?
Everybody hear that? 10. 9.
Let me make sure I reset that one more time.
7.
I don't think they heard me because I kind of mumbled at the end.
All right, we'll go ahead and speak real quick. Good.
So I did a lot of research for that book in the 1980 gold and silver bull market. And what month was the nominal price high hit in 1980 for gold and silver?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Is any of the months up there correct?
No, incorrect. The closest one was February. It was January 21st.
January 21st is the
It was the day after
answer.
It was the day after the Super Bowl in Miami, Florida. So
okay.
It was pretty cool because the ticket in Miami, Florida has the Super Bowl trophy, and that thing's covered in silver. Mm-hmm. It was fun research.
All right, so people, that was your chance to win this 1 gram here. I was kind of nervous. I'm like, man, I got to come out of my pocket now and get this thing away. But yeah, that was a great question, and so we still got a couple. We got June, February, so we got a lot of people throwing out. So the question is, are you just throwing out months because you got 12 to pick from?
Got a chance.
Yeah, so it's a much better chance of winning this than the lottery, huh? Yeah, so the mega $1 billion deal. So anyway, but people, it's been great having you guys join us for this live stream, this special occasion of being able to come to SD Bullion, as you guys see, and go from there. So before we sign off. James, let people know how they can follow you and get in contact with you, because
Sure.
they have a YouTube channel as well. They do a great job of interviewing people.
Sure.
Share with them.
So there's a few things. I would suggest you pick up the guide if you have interest. The thing's pretty big. I did a lot of research for that. You can get that for free at sdbullion.com and under the resources section.
Or the link right below as well.
Link below too. Let's see. I do a podcast with Silver Doctors on a weekly basis. So Silver Doctors on YouTube. It's a channel that we operate and run. As well, I'm on Twitter at James Henry and. So it's simply at James Henry and. You can follow me there. So typically those are the ways that most people can follow me and engage.
All right, fair enough. So people, as we wrap this thing up, want to definitely give you guys an opportunity to check out, as you see on the screen here, the opportunity to acquire a single gram, and then also I put together a book. And that book I would recommend as well because, if you know Alan Greenspan, he's the most noteworthy / historical figure in central banking, because he did a little flip-flop from being an economist that spoke, for gold, but then once he became a part of the Federal Reserve Bank, I haven't heard gold until just in 2014, so I got a video coming for you guys for that. Yeah. But that book there gives you a real in-depth look as to Alan Greenspan's mind prior to becoming a part of the system. So you guys can just click the link, download that. It's, everything's free, whatever.
One caveat on that guy, don't forget, he's basically trying to save his legacy right now by talking positively about gold, but just look at the man's actions. He needs to say mea culpa for those actions.
Yeah, fair enough. So the last question is, Mike, are you going live tonight? Yes, I'll be going live tonight at 9:30. I have another guest joining us in reference to mining stocks. So we're going to be live tonight. So I got someone who's in the mining sector joining us. So it's gonna be a gold month. So just to give you guys, for those that might be tuning in or not, get your weight up month. And so beyond the opportunity you guys have on the screen, I got a little shirt that I got some coming in the mail for myself. I made them so you guys can acquire down below. And then also every live stream, I'm going to throw out a question and give you a 10-second countdown. And then you can, somebody eventually going to take this. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but definitely you have a chance to get your weight up. So I'll help add to your collection if you get the question right. So as always, give us a thumbs up, share this video. Make sure you guys check us out tonight. And other than that, it's been great. Looking forward to continue to work with SD Bullion, because its offer is only available for the next couple of weeks or while supplies last. So If it's gone, it's gone, but you had a chance. So my goal was to put it before you, do what you do. So, James, thank you, my friend, for joining us, letting us come here, whatever. Yeah. So appreciate it. Other than that, everybody be safe. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you tonight. Make sure you guys take advantage of the opportunity if you're interested. Have a good one.